Good morning. Good morning. It is 9 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time, U.S. And yes, indeedy, today we're going to talk about Opentoonz and Tahoma vectors. Okay, so the purpose is to look at the pros and cons of Tahoma/Opentoonz Vectors as a tool essentially for ink and paint, although in my video yesterday, I think it was, I guess it was yesterday. Let's look at what we got going here on the show. I actually used vectors, I believe, for this background. These are very simple backgrounds, obviously, so is this. And we probably could stand to add a little detail back into these shots coming down from the ceiling. There's some accoutrements in this environment that that you can see in the wide shot here that maybe should be integrated into the shots here as well. Same thing, but that's okay because our workflow is sufficiently procedural that we can always go back in, add a few knickknacks here and there, and hit Control-Shift-R, do a quick re-render, and ostensibly improve our show. One thing I see in this particular shot, for example, would be perhaps a little shadow activity here. So there's really kind of two levels we're gonna deal with today. One would be the pragmatic or the practical aspect of how does this affect or enhance work on a real world show, and then on the other hand, kind of the more exhaustive approach where we say, okay, within the software, how does this work? What's good about it? What's bad about it? Yada, yada, yada. Okay, so there's basically two, and I guess I'll use a smart raster level here to kind of break this down. But there's two main benefits that one might enjoy if one's using vectors instead of the smart raster, or the in Opentoonz it's called the Toonz raster level. Pretty much the most common type of level you're going to use. Yeah, I'd suppose for most people the benefit is the fact that, as you can see here, the coloring part of it is again procedural. You can change colors after the fact, and that is kind of a big win. Okay, so for vectors, and by the way, if you're into vectors, this is one of the key reasons why you might be attracted to the Blender grease pencil if you're a Blender person. Would be one would be editability. In other words, I can draw something and then go change it after the fact. With a smart raster level, if I want to change this letter, my only option is to erase and redraw. Okay, so that's a good thing because it forces you to draw a lot, which we probably all need to get better at. The other thing with vectors would be scalability. Okay, so these are potentially big benefits, and so what I want to look at today for both your enrichment and mine is what can we do with vectors. I'm not going to necessarily call this a deep dive because there's a lot of effects you can do with vectors that I'm not going to even get into. So let's just go. The basic thing with vectors is I'm going to go ahead and create a vector level. So for most people, and by the way, Opentoonz versus Tahoma, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter. I'm in Tahoma. I use Tahoma mainly because of my ability to cut and paste from other applications into Tahoma into a standard raster level, which we're not even going to deal with today. So I think for most people it doesn't matter. Are you using Opentoonz or are you using Tahoma? Tahoma's just a fork of Opentoonz. There's small differences, but I would venture to say that 90% of the time it's the same program. Okay, so if we just start out with vectors using, let's just say, a default setting here of 1 to 5. Okay, so if I draw a line like this, I have a vector level. So and a vector shape. So the editability thing, I'm going to just leave it at this. It's pretty simple. If you hit the C key, that invokes this tool, the control point editor. And now, if I didn't necessarily do the greatest job of drawing my character or whatever, I can go ahead and move these points around. So that's useful. The other aspect of that, which I prefer freehand so I can draw a lasso, is sometimes, especially if you're creating an asset that you're going to want to use a lot later, then it can be quite useful to just lasso some nodes or control points and just delete them in order to greatly simplify your character. And is it a double click? I think it's a control click. Let's see here. Yeah, if you control click, you can add a new control point. And so for building up a little library of assets, if you're doing Family Guy, you probably want to create some very simplified characters that you can then reuse over and over again. Which so there's editability, and obviously what we can do here is we could actually finish this shape. So maybe this is a skull, and again, hitting the C key, you can see how complex that shape is. It's a great example of where I'd probably want to just kind of simplify it, and that's going to increase performance and all the rest. Build up some assets for reuse. Another tool that's pretty useful is the tire pump. Okay, so the tire pump lets you go ahead and scale your lines so you can really dial in the look of your character. Okay. However, one thing you want to notice here is if I reduce this, I'm not sure if I just reduce that to a thickness of 0, but let's put it in render mode and see what happens. Okay, we still see that. So let me then therefore dovetail into one of the things I have not liked about vectors, which is one of the reasons I tend not to use them that much. What I found was that if you look in your smart raster level at a range of thickness of your lines, let's say. So this is going from 1 to 5. Okay. So now I'm going to stretch this down here so it goes underneath my vector level. Now I take my vector level, and let's just say for simplicity I go from 1 to 1. Okay. So now when I draw this line, it looks, when I'm drawing it, pretty much the same as the smart raster line. But after I'm done drawing, you'll notice it kind of thickens up a little bit. Okay, I'm not going to try to even get into the technical reason why that is. Frankly, I don't exactly know. But if we then go into render mode, you see that your line, it's just a little thicker than you intended a lot of times. It's really close. I mean, if you look at these two lines, they're pretty close. But then again, the range for this line was 1 to 5, and you're pretty much, once you're getting down to say 2 or 1, you can't get it. You really can't get that, the thinness of line you want. Okay, so now we're getting into one of the practicals. What I found was, generally for vectors, if I go with a thickness of 0.1, and I don't even want a range, I'm just going to go 0.1 on both the min and the max, then what happens is you're getting a line that's a little closer. Let me look real close here. Definitely closer to the line thickness I generally would want for the characters I'm drawing on my show. Okay, so again, let's take a look at this and see what happens if we scale it. So I'm going to hit the I guess we can hit the either control point editor, the C key. Let me see what happens if we grab. Okay, the control point editor only lets you deal with one at a time, so you probably want to hit the selection tool. Okay. Now, if we reduce the thickness to 0, it doesn't render at all. So I'm going to hit the B key. Actually, strike that. Let me see. Yeah, doesn't render at all. Now, there is an option you can explore in your preferences, and I don't remember what it is off the bat. and it might actually be a function of the scene. But somewhere in here, maybe under drawing, there's an option somewhere to go ahead and render lines that have a thickness of 0. Go ahead and render them. So I think probably for me that would be a good option to invoke. Let me see if I can find quickly where it is, and if not, I'm not gonna waste a lot of time with it. So if somebody who knows Opentoonz and Tahoma a little better than me as far as vectors go, you might be able to point me to it. But I know there's an option to do that. For me, the solution at the moment is to just set the size to 0.1, and that gets me to where I want to be in terms of saying, hey, at least what I'm drawing looks about the same as the look I've been getting, as you can see, from my smart raster level. So that's a good thing, because it means that at this point, having sort of gotten the line thickness under control, vectors may become a viable way to do inking. Now, there's a bit of a trade-off when it comes to fill operations, meaning this. If I draw a shape, geez, I've been working a lot with this, the Prince Vespar, so we'll kind of draw a head shape or a drawing that kind of looks somewhat like Vespar. He kind of looks like this. Right now he's been wearing his helmet thing. Okay, so let's zip in here, and he's looking real deadpan at the moment, and actually his eyes are a little too narrow, but that's okay for illustration purposes. Okay, so with your smart raster levels, I'm going to just clean a couple things up here real quick, and I'm going to deliberately leave some gaps. Okay, so with your smart raster levels, the kind of good news is that the fill tool's been improved in Tahoma such that it will close gaps, and it seems to do a pretty good job. So as you can see, you've got a pretty good gap there and a pretty good gap there. If the bane of your life is, like me, fill operations, then the smart raster levels are a pretty good way to go at this point in history. Okay, now if we draw something similar with a vector level, there's a few things we want to notice. I'm going to go ahead and again leave some gaps here. We'll just kind of do a quick drawing. Boop, boop. He's kind of looking in a different direction. Okay, so if we pop this into rendered mode, we can see our lines. If I hit the N key so it's actual size, that's what's going to render. That's what the audience is going to see. So that's not too bad. That looks good. And again, you could use, say, the tire pump tool to punch this up a little bit if you wanted to. I should not be in rendered mode, by the way. Let's do that again. So you could really kind of build some character into the rendering with a lot of control. Now that's obviously very slow. You know, if you're into drawing way more than sort of modeling or a rigging type of approach to animation, then you're probably not going to want to spend tons of time doing that. You would rather just redraw the line with some variable thickness and kind of do it that way. But what about the fill operations? Well, traditionally fill operations with vector levels have been pretty problematic. We do have a gap closer, as it were, so I'm going to say let's turn it up to the maximum and see what happens. And as you can see, it doesn't want to fill that space. Okay, so now you do have this additional step you need to kind of follow of going through and closing things. Now, what I do sometimes, and I actually set up a hotkey for this a couple days ago, is to go ahead and look at the view fill check and just check what's going on with the fill check tool. Let me see something here. Okay, so this is kind of good news in a way. One thing, this is interesting. In this goofy little drawing, the fill check tool is telling me that this is not a fillable area, but yet it filled properly because of the gap closer. So that tells me that under the underlying code, the gap closer and the fill check tool aren't yet synchronized. Now, one thing that's kind of nice here on the vector level is that when the fill check tool is invoked, it doesn't like dramatically change the look of the art the way it does in the it adds this sort of it adds this very non-anti-alias thickness to the line, so you don't, when you do a fill check, you don't really get to see what's really there art-wise. On the vector level, it appears that you pretty much do. Okay, so my preliminary tests show that indeed the fill check tool seems to work pretty well on the vector levels, although not surprisingly, I feel like I'm finding an exception to the rule here right out of the gate. And again, this has always kind of been the challenge with vector levels in Opentoonz or Tahoma, is that the fill operations are pretty sketchy. Let's do a couple things here. Let's go ahead and erase that. And I'm just going to draw a new line. I'm not going to worry about the thickness. And so the fill check tool tells me this is still not a fillable area. And indeed, it doesn't want to fill. So this is the quintessential problem with vector levels, is that they seem to be pretty persnickety about fill operations. And a situation like this, I really don't know how to solve, because what do you do when you literally cannot find any problems? Because this is actually closed with the flesh tone. If we want to be a little more exacting about it, we could use the outline color just so it's very clear. Now if those lines cross a little bit, let's see what happens with the fill check. Now it shows this as being fillable. Okay, so what I would assume is the following. And I'm speculating to a degree here, but basically here's the deal. When a vector shape will not fill, it's probably because let me look here. It's probably BB light animator. Hey, light animator. Okay, it's probably because when you draw a shape, what's really being drawn is essentially something like this. Okay, so the line is going from here to here, but because of the miter or the end of the line, it's a vector shape, and so it has a certain thickness at the end. This part right here is fooling you, because you got two lines that appear to actually create a closed situation. Actually, let me do it this way. In fact, I'm going to hit undo and redo that. So I think what's happening here is if I had two shapes or lines that meet and appear to be a closed shape, in point of fact, they're really not, because this area right here is not actually filled. So I'm speculating here that one of the advantages of vectors obviously being this variability in the thickness of my lines. So if I kind of turn on the smoothing tool here and draw a nice smooth line, yes, it is wonderful that I can affect the shape like this. Okay, in this case I probably want to bring this size down so that we get a more gradual change. But if you're going to get into varying levels of thickness here on the endpoints, you might be asking for trouble. And so that's the bad news. But the good news would be, for me in my workflow, if I want to get, if you look at this, I mean, I'm following kind of an anime aesthetic. The reality is almost all of my ink lines at the end of the day are actually about the same size. I'm not using tons of variability in the thickness of my ink lines. Now here it looks like I did, but I really didn't, because this is actually a shape that's filled. So the only area where you would have what I'm talking about would be Let me turn the smoothing back off, by the way. And just for the record, I tend to, like if you put the accuracy down, this is again kind of analogous to the Blender grease pencil. You're going to get a little bit of post smoothing. You see how the line just smoothed? For me, that's almost always a bad thing. I hardly ever want that. So I tend to turn the accuracy all the way up. And now I can just draw in a pretty natural way. Okay. So with that eyebrow situation, which I guess I started here, this is actually what I would have had in there, is something like that. And for, you know, when you go to actual size, you can see that it looks filled in. So for me, my suspicion is, and this is why I'm exploring vectors, is that probably by using a fixed width ink line, we're probably not going to have the gap problem. The other thing you can, at least not as much, the other thing you can do is turn on snap. If you turn on snap, I would say increasingly I tend to want to have the snap setting low, but that allows you to actually have the lines snap together like so, and presumably that would be a closed shape, and indeed it appears to be. So for me, it's like, okay, this could work. The obvious question being, why would you care or want to in the red? So let's run with this. Okay, so if I was going to try to make this better, what I would say is, well, I want to do a little smoothing here, and we could use, again, the control point editing, like so, to really turn this into a very efficient drawing. Now, you're having to kind of do some extra work. You know, it's not as necessarily fluid. But look at what just happened, actually. What just happened is actually a really good thing, which is this. Even though I changed, okay, so we have a fill. This is actually really powerful. Okay, so now I can say, yeah, Vespar's head isn't quite the right shape. Okay, so I'm going to hit the control point editor, and I'm going to go ahead and fix this up again. What's interesting is that the way the math is being calculated as far as the fill operations go, you notice that the shape is staying filled even though the outlines are moving all over the place. That's really a cool thing. Quite useful. Because I can remember a time in Opentoonz where I don't think that would have worked so well. Don't quote me on that one. But, okay, so there we've introduced an actual break in the lines. So there is some housekeeping required to a degree. Here again, I would hit the control point editor, and let me see, is unfortunately with the there we go. I wanted to make sure that the fill check is on. So you would think what should happen right now is that if these lines touch, what should happen is the fill check tool should kick into action. So there you go. So now this is a way to mitigate the kind of long established problems associated with vector levels in Opentoonz or Tahoma. Okay, so now by making these small edits, I can go in and really dial in the shape of the character. So the editability thing is kind of a big deal. I'm going to have a point of vulnerability here because I suspect, yeah, if I move this, because these are not actually connected. Good morning, Maria. Because they're not actually connected, you can inadvertently break your character. But if you have a shape that you know is kind of in the zone of what you want, I need to find out how do we, let me see here. I wonder if it's something with the selection tool. There's something somewhere, and forgive me for not knowing exhaustively every little ditty thing about this. Part of this is me trying to learn as I go, but I know I've stumbled across it a couple times as I've been dinking around in the last couple days, is there's a way to take these two vector shapes, which it appears that there are actually 1, 2, 3. So now we've reduced this to 3 shapes, which is pretty cool. How do we combine these into a single item? And if we do combine them, do we have the ability to automatically sort of close the gaps, because it's obviously going to try to connect things up. Does the tape tool do that? Let's find out. So I'm going to take the tape tool, And, oh wait, there we go. Join vectors. There it is. It's the tape tool. Okay, so with the tape tool, I'm going to go into rectangular mode and go like this. Okay, now that's cool. That's what we wanted. You see what I just did? All I did was, and I'm going to turn the fill check back off. So this is what you would probably want to do. Okay, so I think we're hitting on the right methodology here. You're going to draw your shapes. You can trim things down, and now the basic disadvantage here is that you're going to probably have more control points than you wanted. But again, since they were connected by the tape tool, you can just go ahead and start deleting them again, and your shape won't break. Okay, so that's good. And you can always hit the control key and click to just add back in another control point, right? So according to our fill check tool, we're in good shape. And if this was me doing it, which I guess technically it is, I would probably want to simplify this even more. So now my question is, can I take the tape tool and actually fix this? Boop. And it looks like you can't. So, and that's because the gap's too big. 100 pixels, that worked. And once again, so, you know, again, with a little bit of fiddling, now that that's been connected, we can actually do this and start dialing in a little bit more control. Okay? So again, the other advantage, of course, with vectors, that's not what I intended. Let's do that again. The other advantage with vectors is scalability. So that means that you're going to get more reuse. I think I'm going to go ahead and kill that one too. You're going to get more reuse out of your characters because theoretically, there we just introduced a problem. Yeah, so really, here's the solution. You got this hole. You would say, let's grab the tape tool, which apparently is the T key. You're going to patch it, hit the C key, and now just delete them. Because now that you've deleted them, it's not going to break. Okay? So, you know, and you can go hog wild here and just control key, click, and build it back up if you've got a drawing behind it. So now we have a character with only 3 control points, right? And by the way, you can actually grab the lines and move them around, but unlike some programs like, say, Inkscape, the way it handles that is pretty hit and miss. Now, one thing you also might want to do is be able to take these nodes and reset them and set to a linear control point. Boop. Okay, that gets rid of the Bezier handles. Set to a nonlinear control point. That keeps the Bezier handles. How do we take it and make it so that the Bezier handles stretch in both directions? Let me check one more thing. A linear control point. Okay. If you move the line a little bit, the Bezier handles reappear. But again, as you can see, it's a linear control point, and so you don't get the continuum of curvature. So generally, nonlinear would be desirable, and I'm very, very sure there's a way in here somewhere to set this to basically this type of a situation. Now this little anomaly here is a bit strange. Let me see here. So I can't get that to behave itself to give me a smooth curvature here. And so I would say if it was me, and again it is, I would probably just do this, and I would hit the control key and just put a new one in there. But yeah, this is kind of bad. This is a bug or something silly that is definitely not what we intended. So I'm not sure what to do about that. It's not a big deal if there's a way to fix it, but if there's no way to fix it, then you're kind of hosed. Let me see what happens if we actually introduce another control point here. So you see what's going on there? For whatever reason, it's determined to not interpolate from here to here. even scalability. If I hit the S key, let's go ahead and fill this just for fun. Okay, if I hit the S key and grab this, it's quite useful that I can move this guy over here, hit Control C, Control V, and this I can scale way down, and now I can carefully draw my character at a large size and reuse it in another shot. And if we look at, this is kind of an interesting point here. Does Tahoma or Opentoonz scale the outlines? Yes or no? And it appears to me that it does not, and that's probably a good thing, I would say. For me, I don't want it to. So I actually think that the behavior, they would say no. If your character looks good at a big size, you want the general proportion of all your lines to be the same, even when you shrink it down. And in either case, there's a limit on how far you can go with that, right? But it would be my general opinion that at least in the space I'm operating, okay, so we're talking about something that's essentially an anime type of visual. Okay, so it would be my general contention that because anime is traditionally done using a hand-drawn scanned art, what that tells you is, well, okay, the guy that's drawing this, obviously you can shrink it or size it up after the fact, okay, but the general principle is that your pencil doesn't change size. So for that type of a cartoon, and frankly most cartoons, the general idea would be if your character is if his head was as small as his eye, in other words, if you have a scene like the last one I did, you're going to have a greatly simplified character. In the past, that was out of necessity because you just can only draw so much detail if you're having to draw it small, right? And so I would argue that generally to adhere to the aesthetics that we are accustomed to seeing in cartoons, we generally want those outlines to actually stay roughly the same size, even when we scale things down. So for me, I would say, yeah, we're half hour into this, and I would say for me, it's worth a try, the whole vector thing. And so let's move forward with the next shot, which is this. And to a degree, you'd say, well, this is kind of stupid, Dave, because you've already got this shot, which is kind of similar. But I'm going to go ahead and do this shot and ink it with vectors and kind of see how it goes. So now we're kind of past the quick and dirty primer, and we're going to go ahead and put it into practice now. So this is going to be shot number 534. So we're going to save the scene as 534. And we are also, just to be careful here, I'm going to make sure that there's no, I created a new scene, so I would assume that there was no holdover from the previous stuff I was drawing as far as, levels or whatever that it's keeping track of in the background, but I wanted to just make sure. So the other thing we want to do is set our output settings right out of the gate. And let me see here. In my preferences, let me just check here. Saving. I don't think this is what I want. I think what I want is project management. Okay, so I'm going to go to the project settings. And in my project settings, this is kind of annoying, but my outputs, I already changed it to be scenes. And it properly browsed to the scenes folder. But for new scenes that I'm creating, even though I've changed that preference in the project settings, it still does not default to the scenes folder for where to save the output. So as far as I'm concerned, that's kind of a bit silly. But one way perhaps, okay, we don't want all caps. That will give us a problem. But perhaps we can mitigate that to a degree by putting in everything except the exact final path and then save it as a preset. Alright, we'll just call this Dave's render settings. Okay, cool. Alright, and now we're going to test it. File, new scene, discard the changes. So we're starting clean. We're going to resave this again as 534. Oh, there it is. And we are overwriting it. Save, save, save. Okay, and now if we go here, it's still wrong, but we should be able to pull up this. Very nice. It changed it to JPEG. It changed it to scenes. And now all I have to do is put 534 render. And now we've got the correct settings for our scene. Okay, so now we're actually gonna just use the Tahoma benefit of being able to cut and paste across the clipboard, and we're gonna paste this in to our scene as a guide. Okay, Control V. There it is. Nope. There it is. Okay, and I'm going to hit the animate tool immediately and just scale this up so it basically fits the screen about right. Okay, so in this case, she's in the middle of a line of dialogue. Okay, so she said, so when we were over here, let me just double check my script. So her whole line of dialogue is, well, come on, you have to admit you do look a bit ridiculous. Okay, so he says, what's wrong with my robes? Okay, and then we switch to this shot. Well, come on, she says. You have to admit, you do look a little bit. So, okay, cool. So what this tells me is this particular shot is going to start on the line, you do look a little bit ridiculous. So all we're going to do is test the vector levels on TNR. And I would assume we probably, I'll tell you what we're going to do. Let's do something here that will save us a little time, I think. Okay, so you guys, if you're really here to get some tips, this might be one you want to consider. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up 529. In fact, I'll even go a step further. I think what I'm going to do is, what I was going to do is load up 529, which is this version, this prior scene that is essentially the same pose that we're going to re-ink with vectors. Okay. Normally what I would do is I'd pull this up, I would look at this level, look at what the file name is, go find that TLV file, because that's a smart raster level, and drag and drop it into this scene. I'm not going to do it quite that way this time, because I want to show a different way of doing it. I'm going to go to the browser, and I would assume if we go into the drawings folder and we look at icons, happily, Tahoma should actually show us the icon for that level. So we ought to be able to browse and just find the drawing of Tianara. I would assume that the way this is ordered is the stuff most recently done is probably at the bottom here. I don't know if that's true, but it doesn't look like that's true at all. So that is okay. I think that might be it. Now, yeah, it is. She doesn't have any arms. Let me see here. I want to load that. Okay, great. So now we come back here, and there it is. Yeah, she doesn't have any arms because I animated those in a different level. File, save all. And there's other ways to work with palettes other than the way I just did it, but that was effective. Okay, so we've got 5 concurrent viewers. And now what we're going to do, friends, is we're going to go ahead and explore our strategy for doing the inking with vectors. Okay, so the first thing I'm thinking is number one, what's going to move a lot? And that would be her hands. It would be pretty easy to, like, if her hand is here and it's going to kind of move around like it did in the other scene, which it is, so she's basically kind of going like this, right? Well, you have to admit, you do look a little ridiculous. You do, right? So the word do is where the moment of action is happening. So that means in this scene what we're essentially going to have is probably about 4 probably about 4 frames to get into the scene. Her hands are going to thrust out as she's saying do, because she started the line of dialogue in this prior shot. When he's sitting here doing this frantic thing, she's talking. You can actually see her head moving on the left side of the screen. Okay, so we're going to have to get them. We're going to have to get the hands to where they need to be, and we're going to have to animate the arms. And then I'm thinking there's going to be some overall plastic tool animation on her body. Okay, so is there a way to encapsulate all that in our vector level? There is. The way we'll do it is we'll anchor body, and then we'll anchor hands and move the hands way over to here. Okay, and then we'll connect it with her arms, which will be slightly bent. And that way, we should be able to use the plastic tool to just move everything back into position and control them separately. So my thinking, I'm just going through the strategy here. My thinking is the arms and the hands are going to be inked all here in position, but then immediately the pieces are all going to be spread out. So that when we do the plastic tool, we're going to wind up with a mesh around her body, around her arm, and around her hands. And then we're going to use the plastic tool to bring them all back together so that we can then animate things like a puppet. Okay? So if that doesn't make tons of sense, I don't think we can delete number. So hang in there with me. Okay, so I'm going to do one quick thing before I do anything else, which is I'm going to turn on autofill, which is going to cause a filled shape to happen. Now I'm going to grab color number 1, hit the R key, which by the way I don't think is the default hotkey for sampling RGB colors. If we look over here, it says it is. So the default for the K key is to sample a palette entry. So if I hit this little eyedropper, let's just say I select this pink color, but then I grab this eyedropper and click this, it's going to jump to that palette entry. By contrast, if I grab a color, but I hit this eyedropper, it's going to sample the actual color. So the reason I'm doing that is to change my outlines to my desired outline color, and then I'm just going to delete that second palette entry. Boop, which by the way got rid of that shape I just drew. Okay, so now we're going to hit the B key. We're going to turn this back off. Actually, the thing to do is turn off auto close. Auto close, auto group, auto fill. I would say this, actually, for the purpose of what I'm doing, it could be that leaving auto group and auto close don't seem to want to separate from each other. So you can have auto close without auto group. So I was thinking maybe if I was just using it for outlines, maybe it would group them, and that would somehow be useful. But so what I would do is I would say this. Generally, what I'm gonna be doing is I'm gonna be just drawing lines, for ink, and so all of these autofill, auto group, auto close are going to be turned off. Draw under is optional. Draw under is actually quite useful. I should probably demonstrate that real quick. So the example in the last shot I did was this is actually a good example. Let me make another palette entry. I'm going to make it white and make it really, really transparent. So you'll see why in a minute. Okay, and then I'm going to grab another color and make it black. Also, if you look at the alpha, pretty transparent. The reason I did that is I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to take this mid-range color, okay, which really is kind of relevant in this scene because this is the color of her dress, okay. So if I turn these options on, then I can draw the shape of her garment, and it's going to automatically fill it in for me. Now the problem is obviously you don't have the ability to automatically generate an outline that's a different color. Hey, Inio-san. Okay, but the only thing I'm demonstrating here is the fact that it's more useful for background painting, frankly. But the idea would be that you create a shape of something that's the local color of that shape, whatever it might be, and then you just use these additional shapes to build up the different values for your painting. Now, I just drew a shape and you can't see it. Well, why? Well, because I had draw under checked. Draw under is actually really useful because, for example, if I were to, I'm not going to do it this way because I do need to draw the outlines, but if I were to draw this shape to sort of represent her flesh tone, I go, oh, geez, I meant to draw her headdress too, and now I have to carefully draw all around it like this, you know, and hope I don't make a mistake. Well, no, if draw under is invoked, then everything new that you draw is actually placed underneath everything else. This is really the key thing for me that makes vector levels in Tahoma and Opentoonz kind of interesting, because it's the only type of level that allows you to actually build up in layers on a single level, right? So now if I turn off draw under, I can actually go in here and let me see here, accuracy, smooth, I'm going to undo that. But you can kind of build up the values like so. This is kind of admittedly a bit of a stupid example, but you know, so we got some shadow areas, yada yada yada. Okay, and then you can dial in how extreme you want that to be, and obviously these are going to build up on themselves. So if I go like that, I can actually have 2 levels of shadow that are starting to stack up, right? So I can dial in how strong that's going to be, and I also can dial in the local color. If I say, well, I wanted this local color to actually be quite a bit more saturated, you know, everything adjusts accordingly. So it's pretty flexible. All right, so I'm going to actually smack this down to white and then hit the Z key so that it goes back to, yeah, so it goes back to the original color I had. So these two, this highlighter and shadower might turn out to be useful. We'll see. But now let's get back to regular work. I'm going to hit the selection tool and just, hello? I said I was going to hit the selection tool and delete everything. delete. And now we're back to, let's go ahead and do some inking. So all this stuff is kind of cool, but for me, I want them all turned off because I just want to do simple inking now, right? Okay, so let's zoom way in and see what we have here to work with. I am going to turn this down a bit. I tend to like to have the drawings pretty quiet in the background. Okay, mouse focus. Hello. Okay, in connecting things, let me just see here. Yes, okay, that's way more accurate. So now this actually feels kind of like drawing with a technical drawing pen. I mean, it really has a pretty nice nice feel to it. The snap is going to introduce a little bit of additional, you know, calculation, and it does seem to slightly affect the way the lines are drawn. It's very subtle though, so probably not a deal buster for most people. Where it becomes a deal buster is when you want to actually build some shading in, you know, again, kind of anime style, where you actually have some areas of where you're not using shadows, you're actually using cross-hatching, right, to give yourself a range of tone. Well, you see, I've mentioned a few times on Fairy Tail, the anime, a lot of times for whatever reason, I don't really understand it, but they tend to put under the chin, they actually use cross-hatching on their characters under the chin like a lot of the time. So I'm going to turn the snapping right on now just so that I can make sure this line is going to connect to the prior one. So zip out just a little bit here. I would say, yeah, that's probably pretty good. Okay, so you'll notice one thing here. When the snapping was invoked, you can see that it does introduce some artifacting, where it really seems to jump around and isn't sure how it wants to connect those up. So what you might want to do, I'm going to turn my accuracy down just to see if that helps. Okay, yeah, I mean that's probably, if you're going to be using snapping a lot, then probably turning the accuracy down so that your lines are just sort of a little bit smoother out of the box is probably not a bad thing. Alright, so if there's any questions out there, by the way, particularly about vector levels, I can't guarantee I'll have the answers, but I certainly will try. So here we go. Boom. And now we're going to just keep forging ahead. I'm leaving the snapping on and the accuracy low because what I'm inking right now, for the most part, I'm not in a very drawing mentality right now. I'm in a tracing mentality, you might say. You see what that does. Not bad, not bad. Okay, now how do we want to handle her? I'm going to turn my accuracy way back up, rotate this a little bit. I don't know, it's just a little bit sketchier look that sort of captures her prettiness better. So I'm allowing myself a bunch of sketchy lines here, which I normally wouldn't be doing. Again, it definitely doesn't feel gosh, as viscerally accurate as what you get with your smart raster levels. It's almost like the software is working a little harder than you want it to. But that looks pretty good. Alright, so let's use our okay, so this is what we could do here. If we say, okay, the other eye looks better. Okay, so let's go ahead and get a little leverage here. So I'm going to hit Control-C, Control-V. To be safe, I'm going to... Oh, come on, that's not what I wanted to do. I'm going to move this over here so it's not overlapping some of my other lines. And then I'm going to go here, and I'm going to flip this 100% on the horizontal axis. And that way, probably at slight rotation, that way I can bring this over here and know that the eyes are actually identical, which is probably a good thing. Okay. B key. We're so small here on the screen that actually I'm going to undo that. Let me think about this for half a second. Let's crank the smoothing up for a moment and see what this does for us. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to do that. Boom. Okay, so if I hit Control-Shift-F, which is a hotkey I set up, pretty sure this is going to be a fillable area, and indeed it is. So that worked out well. Okay, so let me zoom out, and I'm thinking about her eyes. Let's do it this way. Let's take the geometry tool and just draw a circle, and then grab the eraser and smack off the top of that circle. Now I'm going to hit the S key, and one thing I just noticed is it set the circle tool, I think, probably has well, it doesn't have its own size setting, so for whatever reason this line is not the right thickness. This is a thickness of 1, and what we really want is 0.1. So we can change that over here. And now what we can do is cheat. I'm going to zoom way in here, grab this, We'll see if this backfires, but I think we'll probably be okay. Okay, I'm going to smack that way down in there, and then I'm going to zoom way in. And, you know, the problem is with her irises, I didn't want to... oh, I guess we got an extra coming along for the ride. I don't know how I managed that, but anyway. Okay, so that looks pretty good. So I'm going to go Control-C, Control-V. And now I can have a second one over here, once again, rotated slightly. So this is certainly not as, let's say, interactive. Okay, we've got some snapping going on here. Right there. Overall snapping like that, I have no idea what would be, why would that snap there? Okay, once I moved it away and left it off a ways, this weird snapping stopped, so, and now it started again. That is pretty strange. That is pretty strange. So right now I'm dragging and nothing's happening. And then after a bit, oh, now it moves. Yeah, that's definitely kind of, in a big way, not what. So, I mean, you know, the quintessential coincidence is that this is too far away from the, you know, I'm trying to get it to match up to her eyelashes. When I start moving, it's too far away. When I move it a little bit, it jumps to a position that's too far in the other direction. So the one thing apparently that I absolutely cannot do, will not be permitted to do, thank you Tahoma, is to actually get this position precisely where I want. So there's some snapping thing going on. I don't know anything about that. I've never used any snapping tools in Opentoonz or Tahoma for anything, so I'm not sure what's going on there. If anyone knows, please chime in and let me know, because that's really frustrating. Like, in a big way. Okay, so having said that, here what we'll do is draw another circle. Okay. And again, a little strange because I don't see anywhere in the geometry tool. Well, okay, I'm sorry, my mistake. I'm going to fix this right now. Let's just delete that. Okay, so yeah, here's the problem. In the geometry tool, I didn't set my size, 0.1. Boom. Okay, so now, there we go. S key, smack that right in there. Control-C, Control-V. Yeah, well, that snapping thing was really strange. I have no clue why that was doing that. Hey, Tom doing art, good morning. Okay, so let's zoom out. And, you know, basically, I must say, it does have a little bit of that kind of look you get from the Blender grease pencil, that's for sure. Let's turn our snapping back on. And again, what we're going to do is, I guess, and by the way, there's one other advantage to vectors you can see right here that you don't get with any other level type, which is infinite canvas. So probably worth mentioning. I'm going to turn this smoothing back down a bit. Okay, so probably I need to kind of do my usual thing of work from the known to the unknown. So she's going to have her shoulders here, and basically I'm going to connect this with the actual dress color. So I'm just kind of taking a minute to make sure that what I'm seeing in my head is what I'm going to draw. So that's not too bad, actually. Boom. We'll connect that there. And we need to go here in order to see this. So now here, this is kind of interesting. For this shot, it's not actually, but darn it. Segment eraser doesn't work as well as one might have hoped. Okay, so that's okay. That's okay. So now her actual dress color is this, so I'm just going to go ahead and make a connection there. And if I hit Control-Shift-F, looks to me like we do not have a closed shape here. So now I'm not sure what to do. So I'm going to take the tape tool. Hello, tape tool. There you are. And see if this helps. Okay, it looks like it must be really, really thinking. Interesting. I mean, I would see that as a good thing. You know, it's having to kind of decide, examine this entire area and see if there's any gaps that it can fill. So, or it could be that Tahoma is about to lock up and die, which if that happens, we're kind of hosed because I haven't saved in a while. But let's give it some time. See, this is the kind of operation that, if Tahoma does a good job of it, of ferreting out where the gaps are and going ahead and closing them, you know, if it takes a few seconds to do, I wouldn't really mind. But it does appear to me that we have a locked condition, which is pretty bad. I wasn't really expecting that because Tahoma almost never crashes. Almost never. I don't think it crashed. Did it ever crash yesterday? I don't think it did. So we might be in a pickle here. Join vectors. Well, okay. I see what's going on here, maybe. Yeah, the tape tool is not only searching for gaps to fill, but it's also got to figure out how to take whatever vector shapes fall within its purview and connect them into single shapes. So should that take an entire minute? No. No. So unfortunately, I think we're screwed here. Well, Tahoma, thanks for putting me in a pickle here. So yeah, turning off this preview, and we're back here, and Tahoma is, we're screwed. We're screwed. So it appears to me we do need this ability to sort of patch the leaks, right? And if what we've discovered is that the most obvious way to patch the leaks, which is just select your whole drawing and let it find the leaks and patch them. Great. But that crashes the software or locks it up or something, because we have no indication of what's going on here. Actually, I wonder, I'm going to go ahead and pop open my task manager and see if we're seeing 100%. No, actually, yeah, our CPU load is only 10%. So that's a very bad sign. If the CPU was maxed out, that would be like, okay, Tahoma's just really, really, really thinking. That doesn't appear to be the case. So, quite unusually, I haven't looked at the log window, Tom. So, yeah, this is the most egregious lock or crash situation I've seen in weeks with Tahoma. Why? Because actually, it does appear to me that it's not actually trying to crash, because if it was, when I click the window the second time, I would get a dialog with the option to close the program. So what it actually looks like it's doing is it really is just thinking. But at a CPU load of only 10%, and yep, indeed, that's very, very, very bad. We have to completely start over. So that's okay. We're going to go boom, grab this, hit the R key. We're just going to do a quick recap here. Boom, boom, boom. Delete everything, and now we can get back to work. Okay, hit the B key. We don't want any of this on. We do want a size not of 0 but of 0.1. And now, I tell you what, just for fun, let's do this a different way. If you don't consider yourself great at drawing, do this instead. Use the geometry tool, and we're going to set this size as well to 0.1. Okay. And then use, well, you could use multi-arc, but I actually, multi-arc's useful on smart raster levels. Nah, it's not that big of a deal. Smalgin 11. Okay, so here's what you do. You go click, 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 and you can obviously move around. Okay, so what's this doing for me is it's giving me my outline, and enter. With a very, very low, if you hit the C key, you can see that the only control points are where I just clicked. So therefore, it's a very, very lightweight model, if you will. And if you go in and from this starting point, dragging the outlines around actually works really well. Once you move them, the Bezier control handles then appear. Okay, in this case, I would say probably delete that one and then kind of stretch that out a bit. Okay, so I think for a lot of people, this would be a good way to work. Now, I'm noticing, okay, so I should explain this. There's a languishing bug that is not a Tahoma or Opentoonz problem. It is, as far as I can tell, a stylus tablet driver issue, and the only place it ever has appeared is in Opentoonz and Tahoma, and so you're seeing it right now, which is that every time I clicked. Okay, so for me, if I'm going to use this technique, I'm going to actually delete this entire line. What's happening is every place I clicked, it actually created 2 nodes, not 1. Therefore, every single one of these, if you click on them, if I drag it, you can see there's actually 2 nodes there, not 1. So that's bad. But not the end of the world either. So if you're going to use the geometry tool, so G key in my, well, no, not the G key. What is it? Yeah, I know the default hotkey is G, but you're creating a polyline. So for me, it's kind of important that I put on my my kind of blender hat, actually, my modeling mentality, because what I'm really going to do here is actually use the mouse and just. But I mean, for a lot of situations and for a lot of people, this would be a very good way to work for doing ink and paint. Click. Okay, so now if you hit the C key, now we will see that there are indeed, you know, you can grab it. Okay, Maria's out there screaming at her computer screen right now. Save, Dave, save! I hear you. I hear you, baby. I hear you. Okay, so the back to the geometry tool. And by the way, when you're using the geometry tool, it's a lot like using the Bezier tool in Krita. Click, you can drag. You can go ahead and get your curvature in there as you go if you want to. Click, drag. This is exactly the same actually as using the Bezier tool in Krita. Little drag. I want that one to be a straight line. Click, 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 and just hit enter to stop the line. Now I'm going to go back to my brush because it just seems kind of silly to be using the geometry tool for these little lines that generally, you know, I just kind of want to feel where they go and, you know, put my drawing hat back on. So, all right, so I'm going to move this slightly just so the Bezier handles appear, and then I can go ahead and correct this. So this is, again, the benefit of vectors, editability. You say, well, I didn't draw it quite right. That's okay. Just fix it. Like so. Okay? Again, I'll save my work. Save, save, save. Okay, I turned out some of the stylus issue. Maybe it can be corrected by changing your stylus settings in the driver windows itself. I've kind of been down that road, up and down and back and forth. The original driver for the XP Pen Digital Artist 15.6 tablet, which I love. I own 2 of them. The original driver, I detected the problem when, what was I doing? It was the selection tool. Okay, so over here in this level, if I take the selection tool and grab a, just lasso something, so as you can see I can move it around. With the original driver that came with this guy, if I use the selection tool, I'd click here to say rotate it, and the selection would disappear. So it'd be like clicking there and having it just, it's like, so I couldn't actually use the selection tool to do editing with my stylus. And I got used to that, and it's still true. Well, I shouldn't say that. This was back when I was using Opentoon. Okay. And I saw the same symptom in Tahoma. The updated driver fixed that. But you do see some languishing issues here and there. Put it that way. Okay, so that's fine. Alright, so the biggest problem here is that I really kind of had it going on with the body, but maybe I'm very much putting my artist hat on at the moment because I'm trying to really see in my mind the picture here. Yeah, not too bad. Okay, I think we're okay. That looks good. Save early, save often. Okay, so let's do a fill operation on the lines. What? Okay. And we're going to do a freehand fill operation on the lines. So that lets me lasso this area right here and have it not work. Okay, so that's interesting. If this was a smart raster level, that would work. It would color the lines. It appears that we're not going to be so lucky with the vector levels. Probably because the only way it will do the fill operation is if what I'm doing encompasses an entire unbroken bit of geometry. Meaning, if I hit the S key, if I were to do the fill operation on this entire line, boop, it works. Well, that doesn't do me any good. However, there is a fix, which I suppose would be to taking the Alt key to dial this down, and I can remove that segment, hit the B key, and just connect this like that. And the only reason I did that is so that I've got a fillable shape, which we still don't have, as you can see. So that's not good. When we locked up, it was because we were trying to solve that very problem. So we're already back to where we were when things went haywire. But the question is, that might be the problem right there. Let's see. I did save my work, so let's try this with the tape tool. So what I should be able to do is go whoop. Oh, come on. Normal. I want rectangular. Doo-doo. There it goes. It filled it in, and it still doesn't tell me we have closed shapes, so that's not good. How about right there, folks? And actually, look at this. We've got a hiccup there as well. Okay. I'll bet you it worked now. Nope. Still we've got gaps. Look at that. Now, there's a gap too. However, let's backpedal here just a little bit. Remember, one of the things we're hoping we can take advantage of is the gap closer. It works really well on smart raster levels. If we set this gap to, well, let's go to 10. Let's see what happens. We don't want freehand mode, by the way. We want normal. Okay, so this doesn't really bode well for vector tools because that's a pretty small gap. That is a very small gap. Oh yeah, my bad. Animation software. Getting the fill tools right is something that basically never happens. But both the Blender Grease Pencil and Tahoma's Smart Raster levels are both doing a much better job than they used to. So that's unfortunate because we have the quintessential Opentoonz vector level fill problem, which is that it just freaking will not recognize a closed shape and fill it. It is what it is. So what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? The answer is Windows Ink. No, 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 no. I don't use Windows Ink. I like WinTab. Windows Ink, don't get me started. I've been down that road. Let's put it this way. Imagine having a brand new... Oh, I mean, think about it. The WinTab API has been in place for, what, 20 years? Very mature, very well established, very clear. What might we be getting with Windows Ink that improves on that? I mean, I think WinTab accommodates tilt. So anyway, so think about if you had a stylus driver where everything about it's just spanking wonderful, except one little tiny itsy wincy detail, which is that whenever you go to draw, you go about this far before the driver wakes up and actually starts drawing. That's what I've encountered across the board in many different environments with Windows Ink. As far as I'm concerned, it's basically worthless. Now, other people may have a completely different experience, and that's fine. I respect that. But for me, got no use for Windows Ink. And this is going back several years with several devices on several computers trying. It's never been a win for me. Okay, so now what do we do? Well, let's do her hands, and then we'll move them. Whoops, hitting the B key. And then we'll move those hands out of the way so that we can use the plastic tool to, well, you'll see when we get there. Okay, so that again shows as being an unfilled shape. So maybe, yep, there we go. Okay, cool. All right, so I'm gonna hit the B key, and if you're like me, if you're having to use the fill check, you might find you pretty much leave it on all the time. So anyway, selection probably makes sense to fill the hand before we duplicate it. So let's hit the fill tool. Okay, wait, what just happened? That was interesting. How? Okay, I did not know you could do this. This is kind of interesting. Grab a vector shape with the selection tool and then select a different color, and all the lines change to that color. Who knew? I'll take it. Okay, so normal areas with a gap fill, and there we go. That worked fine. Okay, so now we're going to hit this, grab it, Control C, Control V, and now we want to definitely move this down here. Take the horizontal, add a little minus sign in front of it. Boop. Now, oh shoot, it lost its selection again. You stinker. Okay. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to stretch the hand out like this. And since vectors, this should work, since vectors are infinite canvas, I should be able to pull this all the way off screen if I want to. So the concept here is to get the hands kind of in the final position they're going to occupy. Well, why did you do that, Dave? The reason I did that is so that I can then hit the B key and, okay, sorry, I want my outline shape. So now what I'm going to do is create a shape here, which is going to be problematic, as you'll see here in a moment. Okay, I should have selected draw under, so let's redo that. This is where draw under helps. I want the outline for the sleeves to be, there's two ways to look at it. I want it to be underneath the, okay, hold on. Control panel, pen and touch. Okay, Tom doing art is pretty smart. That rhymes. Tom doing art is pretty smart. I sound like Dr. Seuss. Okay, and Tom's helping, and so I don't want to disregard this. This could actually be a great tip. He says pen and touch is the settings I most recently turned off. Let's give it a crack. But you're saying in the Windows control panel. You're not saying anything with Opentoonz. Let's take a look. Certainly worth a peek. And you're saying pen and touch. Well, by the way, and to Tom's credit, when I'm using like that little circle that just jumped up on the screen, that is not because of Tahoma or the tablet driver. That's because of Windows. So you do have a conflict going on, or a conflation of what's going on with the Windows pen and touch settings versus the tablet driver. So you may well be onto something there, buddy. So I'm going to go to pen and touch. Now I'm on Windows 8.1, but there it is, pen and touch. I'm on the other screen. And we definitely don't want flicks, but how do we... Double tap. Oh, that's what you said. Double tap. How do we actually turn it off completely? Oh, it's just typical Windows. You have the ability to change it, but you don't have the ability to say, no, Windows, you're stupid. We don't like this feature. Just turn it freaking off. That's that's completely common for Windows. Pen and hold for right-clicking. For crying out loud. Can't turn that off. Single click, can't do anything. Let's just kill as much as we can kill and see what happens. Uncheck that right-click thing. Yeah, okay. So we'll grab that. Now, to test what we were talking about here, see if it has any effect. First of all, okay, when I click and hold just now, I didn't see a little circle jump on the screen. So clearly something has changed under the hood with Windows pen and touch. So I'm going to hit the geometry tool and just kind of see what happens here with the polyline. I'm using the stylus. Let's draw a shape, hit the C key, and now do we have two? Actually, our little circle's popping back up. Are we going to see two or one? Ah, we only see one. Okay. So it does in fact appear that what I think, Tom, I think you hit onto something quite useful, and I appreciate that. Thank you so much for that tip, because it looks like that mitigated one of the problems we uncovered a bit ago. Okay, so back to work. B key. So here's the trade-off with draw under that I was starting to allude to. With draw under, obviously if we draw this, we want it to be under the hand. The problem is that later when things move, if the vector shapes were to move or be animated relative to each other, you might wind up uncovering an area within the shape that never got filled in because it was blocked by the palm of the hand. I hope that makes sense. So in this case, the better solution is to just say, we're just going to draw the shape, leave it on top, like so. Okay? And get these shapes filled up properly, and then we'll deal with the ordering. So in this case, again, we're going to take color 9 in order to close this shape. Turn on the snap. Hopefully this isn't snapping to the other shape. Okay, let's hit the fill check. Ah, it looks like we're in good shape. Okay, so now there's one more thing I want to do in order to set this up for animation and whatnot, which is take this and just literally move it out. Get it out of here. So I know this is very non-intuitive. It definitely speaks to the idea of doing like a puppet animation kind of thing. Okay, that was exactly what we didn't want. Yeah, this whole thing of having something selected and then you select another palette entry and it changes its color, I don't know if that's actually a feature. It's kind of strange, but I could see where it might be useful. Now the bad news is I keep trying to fill this. Let me see here. Okay, so according to Tahoma, these are still not fillable shapes. Okay, that I didn't want to do. Let's turn snapping back off. Just want to add a little bit of kind of wrinkle action here. And then I see one of the problems there But okay, so I would assume that that should take care of that, and it did. And I have no idea about this side. It looks to me like maybe that, maybe that, maybe that. There we go. Okay, cool. So what I was kind of trying to say is that we're definitely delving into a methodology where it'd be easy to say the time it takes to jump through all these hoops to make it work might kind of exceed the benefit you get from using the vector levels. So what I'm doing is I'm desperately trying to get Tahoma to see this shape as a closed shape, and it absolutely refuses to. It's really, really, really not a good situation. For me, probably a deal breaker. We're really, really close to deal breaker territory here, where it's like, okay, it's taken forever. I'm having to, you know, massage the situation so much and do the software's job for it that it's like I would have had this done 10 times over if I had been using smart raster levels. So, but let's keep trying here, because the whole point of the video was looking at the benefits of vector levels. Control Shift F, make it work. I don't think I'm quite there with the vector levels, because by gum and by golly, I'm not seeing any gaps. And look, you know, if this was a raster level, I wouldn't be even, I'd never have to do this. Go through search, 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 and there's no gap, but yet when okay, right hand shoulder. Well, there may be in the right hand shoulder, but you mean here? Oh wait, that's the left hand shoulder. Okay. There's a little erroneous bit. Oh, come on. That's not what I wanted to do. It's probably here. No, that's probably not it, actually. That's a closed shape. Wow, what a pain. Yeah, definitely not my idea of a good time. Maybe there? No. We got that, but that was put there by the tape tool. So that should be as boom. Still no close. Yeah. Okay, guys, so with that, I say basically I quit, but not quite. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to solve it this way. I'm going to take the selection tool. I can always move TNR back to where she started. So what I'm going to do is move everything so it's on the screen, and we're going to convert this vector level to a smart raster level and forge ahead. So level, convert vectors to smart raster. When you do that, you still get to keep the vectors around. So I'll go ahead and turn them off, but now we've converted this to a smart raster level. And what we're going to find is that everything's probably going to fill wonderfully, and indeed it is. So there it is, folks. There it is. Hit F key. Here's the headdress, and now we need to finish inking. Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to kind of make this, I'm going to bring this in as tightly as I can, so that because we don't have our, oops, darn it, we don't have our infinite canvas. So this is a bit of a kludge, but what I'm going to do is bring all these pieces in close together so that we can move her back into her initial position with some ability to still use our reference drawing. Okay, so probably something like that. We'll just see if this works. Okay, and then we grab this. So now are we going to lose this? Is that going to get chopped off? I don't know. It looks like it probably is. Yeah, that sucks. So this is dumber than a box of rocks. Like I said, we're kind of at the point here where this scene is taking way, like way longer than it ever would have if I wasn't doing it this way. But there you go. Life in the big city. So this color would appear to be wrong. Why? I guess we'll just lighten it up. Okay. So now we're back to smart raster level. So this has been a very useful exploration. So. Okay. This seems like it's really hot. How did that get turned back up? Oh, I bet you I know. You see something. I'm gonna hit the tilde key and then control tilde. Nope, it didn't affect the transparency. So I'm not sure why. Oops. Oh, come on. Tahoma, really, dude? And now I'm hitting undo and it's the buffers are screwed. God darn it. Deep cleansing breath. Deep cleansing breath. Well, there you go. A real-time example of something that's kind of been a known thing for a while, which is that the undo buffers for Tahoma, and I would presume Opentoonz, can get corrupted in very interesting ways. Okay, so I'm going to hit the N key. Yeah, I mean, what are we going to do? Are we going to do the... see, if our vector level hadn't been so stupid, then this would be quite a bit more... Like, I could fix this really easily, right? Let me hit the eraser. What I would do is I would erase this little gap right here. It must have selective on, yep. Okay, what I would do is I would erase that. I'd say this line is wrong. So if our vectors weren't being so stupid, we could just adjust this and fix it. Well, we don't get to have that because we can't rely on the vectors when it comes to fill operations. And by the way, nor have we ever been able to. There has never been a time where the kind of silliness we just saw trying to do the fill operation didn't exist. And as you can see right there, this is actually a good illustration though of the trade-off. You know, I've lost the benefit of editability in exchange for I had to go ahead and redraw it. Well, how long did it take to redraw it compared to how long it would have taken to edit it? You know. Let me see here. Now we may have another problem. This is the dress color. Okay. I may have just... That's actually my mistake, I think. Okay. We can keep rocking ahead here. Now, do we want to use the geometry tool? Why not? If we're going to do it, we need to do it this way. Same thing we did before, and that's going to be too thick of a line. Thickness. Oh, gosh. I'm going to say 0. Oh, it doesn't do 0. There are no decimals. There are no decimals. Who knew? Okay, so what that means is I'm going to make this pretty large, specifically so that I can scale it down and have the lines shrink a bit. There we go. That's probably more like it. Yep. Okay, let's zip in here. So... Hey, cool, Razlad. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is take my eraser and once again chop that little piece off and then select this And I'm actually going to make a duplicate right away. Yeah, that worked. Okay. Now I can grab this one, hello, and put this over here. And just kind of dial it in. You traded away the benefit of editability. You know, if the only way you could get the editability benefit, or the scalability, frankly, for that matter, is by going back away from your real art back to your art that was screwy, you've introduced this additional step where basically all the benefits are lost. All the benefits are lost. I mean, if I really wanted to work that way, I would actually do my ink and paint in Inkscape. You know, I would just do it all in Inkscape, and then same way I've worked with Krita, just cut and paste it into Tahoma and call it good. The other thing we've lost, by the way, look at this. I mean, this is another example of why it's kind of sad, is because what's one of the benefits we could have enjoyed if the fill operations worked properly is we could actually, as I said, as I've been doing on background paintings, is look, I can actually build up my art in layers, bake my shadows into it. You know, all those benefits gone. Gone. Sorry, you don't get any of them, because just at the moment where you really needed the software to work, it failed. So, screw it. So now we're back to putting our shadows on separate levels, which is fine. It's not the end of the world, and vector levels do work for that. Okay, so what were we talking about with the plastic tool? This is going to get into some pretty hairy but pretty cool stuff. All right, I'm not going to worry about, well, I guess I do need to color her in, because otherwise we'll lose our, the mesh won't calculate properly. So for that reason, let me go ahead and close these gaps right here. Fill, 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 fill. Also kind of forgot her eyebrows, didn't you? Fill that. Zoom out. Okay. We'll leave the lines for later in case we want to add the lip sync, but yeah, and I will say that this would be my opinion about if the only reason you're using vectors is for clean lines, for me, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying the benefit, because when I look at you know, recent shots I've done, the lines look really good. So there's no reason to go to vectors for that. Nope. I was really hoping that the fill tools would be, you know, kind of up to scratch. And unfortunately, they're just not. So hate to, you know, hate to have a video that has a title that's all about working with the vector layers, where the great conclusion we draw is that, by the way, at least for me, I shan't be using them that much, at least not for ink and paint. But, well, that's what makes my channel unique, is there's no curated content. You get what you get, and sometimes it goes well and sometimes not so much. Okay, so watch this. I'm going to hit the X key, generate a plastic tool skeleton, and as you can see, it draws a mesh around all the different pieces. That's kind of cool, because now that means we can go ahead and create the root, and I'm giving myself a couple extra branches here just to cover myself. And by the way, I'm going to use my stylus for this right now to see if this is working. Okay, so again, Tom, well done on your suggestion, because the other place where I used to always see the problem with the stylus is when I was creating the nodes for the plastic tool. It would always create two, and that has been true even with this more recently updated driver, and it does seem to be solved now, so that's good. Okay, so now what we're going to do, this is actually going to get a little bit ugly. A little bit ugly, people. Me personally, I've said in Darren's live stream, I'm a little perverse. I like the roughness of pencil and texture and animation. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, Artisol, I assume you mean Razlad, did you get is it an XP pen? I don't see XP pen in your comments. If it's an XP pen, it's probably similar to mine. Mine's the 15.6, but okay, so here's what we want to do. This is a little confusing probably. Let's think about where the shoulders are. Okay, here's the shoulders. There's the shoulders. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a node over to here, here, then a little bit of a wrist situation, then there's the hand. Very strange, Here, boom, boom. Okay, that seems pretty wacky. Well, the reason I did that is because now I can go into animate mode. I'm going to turn off keep distance. And now I can actually, hopefully without too much difficulty, smack these into place. Okay, I see something, a mistake that I made. Okay, and the mistake I made is that you really okay, so let's go back to build skeleton. I forgot about this little detail. Really, this should be here. And we're going to get into stacking order too, by the way. This is important. So if you're going to play around with puppet animation this way, you want to always have at least 2 nodes so that you can get rotation. Here, gosh, I'm kind of feeling like that node's probably 1 too many. And so let's try it again. So yeah, this can be pulled over to here, but now because of this node I can actually get my rotation. And then as you can see, now the problem is we have keep distance turned off, so let me, so don't do any rotating until you've got stuff basically in position, or you're gonna introduce a well, what I just did right there, you're gonna introduce a distortion that you didn't intend in your character. Okay, so now this is a little tricky because I gotta get these guys kind of where they need to be, and then turn keep distance back on so I can get the rotation sort of smacked back into shape. Then I can turn this back off. Let's get this. I said turn it back on. Smack that in there, and as you can see, it's really, really ugly. So, but my objective is to get this really close to this position, and probably you will always find that you're going to have this interactive little negotiation going on with your skeleton construction. And I'm seeing it here where I probably want to move those a little bit so that we can ultimately get these a little bit more where we want them to be. This isn't too bad. Again, it's a negotiation, back and forth and back, do this, do that. We probably do want a node there. Animate. And in this case, I must say, oh yeah, because that's the shoulder, right? Okay. So we actually have 2 nodes that are really, really, really on top of each other. So that's problematic. You probably didn't want that. But in order to get it dialed in, you got to keep bouncing back and forth. I need a hotkey to switch between animate mode. So keep distance being turned off allows me to just get this to where it needs to be. And then, again, sorry guys, this is going to have to be moved yet again, over and over and over. Well, this is why I don't do it this way very often, but it can be cool. Okay, so now we have a stacking order problem. The stacking order problem, let me see here. Yeah, well, number one, the wrists you want to go to stacking order, and let's put the risks at 1. So boop, and that causes it to be comped over top. So we'll just change it to 1. Okay, this one looks good. We've still got keep distance off, so that means we can still adjust this. Not bad, not bad. Now if we turn keep distance back on, well, again, we can see a little bit of a problem. We're not going to want to have a ton of range of motion here, because you'll, as you can see, the weaknesses of this approach become very evident. I think this one right here should have a stacking order of -1. Yeah, so it's behind. Okay, so there you see the problem. We've got to, once again, negotiate with it. Move that away. Okay, not too bad. And again, this now is not where we want it to be. So it's a touchy business. It's a really touchy business. But once you get it dialed, yeah, see again, there, we're losing it at the top. But I would say the reason I have to keep jumping into build skeleton mode is that these additional nodes, if I move them in animate mode, it's going to deform the skeleton, and that's not what we want to do. We just want to get things kind of where they're supposed to be so that we can then animate them with some level of predictability. Alright, so let's grab that. We'll stretch this down and just play around with seeing whether this is even going to work. Probably, since we're going to be diving right in with motion, if a tiny little gap appears, we're going to live with it. Now we could go in and compensate for that with an extra bone that stretches things a bit. Oh, yeah. 15.6. Yeah, cool. Yeah, I've been really happy with digital artist stuff for the most part. It's been whoopsie poo. So there's one of your problems. There's one of your problems you will run into is, have I grabbed the right node or not? And obviously the answer was nope. But that's the animation I was looking for. Pretty much. And again, with TNR, I just want to get the basic movement. Just get the basic movement. Okay, we don't have global key turned on, so because of that, we didn't set a key when we, oh boy, so many things to explain. Because global key is turned off, I never set an initial position for the whole darn skeleton. So probably something like this would be okay, and then I'm going to turn global key back off. What is Zuko? Yeah, it's Zuko. Excuse me, Maria, but we need to correct your spelling, I'm afraid. Yeah. Okay. And I think probably I could put this here. I'm rolling my own tweens. There's no interpolation going on here. What she says is, she says, you do look a bit ridiculous. I'm going to go ahead and keep rolling my own tweens. Let's just see what happens. I don't like that at all. That looks bad. That looks stupid. We're getting into the realm of stupid. Yeah, sorry about that, Tom. It's that has happened before. All right, Zuko, hang on a second. I'm gonna go see if Zuko wants to come out and visit. Now, he has a tendency to climb up like on the ceiling of his cage. He's got a really big cage. I mean, it's like 5 feet tall and 4 feet in every other dimension. I mean, it's big. And you know, if he's hanging on the ceiling, there's not really a good way to invite him off in order to bring him out. So if he goes to his perch, then it's easy to let him step up. And so I would say, you know, I mean, I would, frankly, folks, this is a pretty major fail to me. I mean, so basically, so far, I'm glad I tried it because, you know, it's good to try different things. But I would say, on balance, this is one of those YouTube videos that I probably would delete, because every single path I've gone down that's a deviation from my normal way of working, that's been working really well and going fast, has been a disappointment. You know, the fill operations don't work. Doing this as a puppet animation instead of just freaking redrawing her twice is requiring copious amounts of fiddling. And there's lots of different ways to set up a puppet. You don't have to do it this way. But, like, for example, you could actually put the arms. You could use the plastic tool to deform them, but actually put them on separate levels and then use the animate tool just to get them in position, because dialing in the exact position so you don't have these stupid looking gaps at the shoulders is, as I say, enormously difficult. I mean, like, fiddle, switch, check, find out it's wrong, make an adjustment, fiddle, back and forth, you know. I mean, it's like endless. I've spent like an hour just dicking around with the plastic tool skeleton, which I never do. So this whole session seeming to be kind of a cosmic fail to me. Maybe you guys, I don't know if you guys agree, but at the end of the day, it doesn't even look that good. They finally fixed the mesh naming problem in the new Opentoonz. I tell you, with the plastic tool, just to address that. Oh, a scale feature for the X sheet. Now that's a surprise. You know, how much would I use it? I don't know. Because for these rows to be smaller, I just don't, at least for me, I don't know if that would be useful that often. And if I really wanted it to be, if I really wanted to go down that road, I could just use the timeline. So I'm not sure. I mean, I kind of thought it might be interesting to have scalability in the X sheet. But anyway, well, my problem at this point is I'm a little disappointed with this scene, and I feel like I want to retreat back to like doing what works. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to save this. Well, actually, there's no reason to save it because I'm about to save over it. What I'm going to do is actually go back to 529. Sometimes this is what happens, people. You know, you have a cosmic fail and you got to deal with it. So I'm going to go down into this shot and fix what's wrong. And what was wrong basically was her, I wasn't happy with the way her, I did her eyes and stuff. I just kind of feel like I didn't quite get that right. So I'm looking at this. I'm just going to do this the way I would do it if I was working in Krita. I'm just going to go ahead and start adjusting things and figure that I can always patch it up and fix it. I would say a little bit of a zoom out a bit. That does feel better to me. I'm squinting so I can kind of get my perspective here. Okay, so it is what it is. Now what do you do? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is turn off the shadows so they're not confusing me. Alright, now I'm going to hit the G key, grab this color, and I'm actually going to hit the V key and just paint it in. So I'm using the paintbrush tool or the smart raster paint tool. Like so. It's set to lines and areas, so it literally is going to paint over everything. Anything that I change is going to get painted. I mean, in other words, it's going to paint over lines and areas. And so, little quick hand painting. Not too shabby. All right, let's zoom way in and see what we've got here. Okay, so I'm going to say, let's thicken those. Now I'm going to hit the B key and kind of sweeten that up a little bit. And boy, oh boy, do I see a lot of little hiccups that need to be filled in. Hiccups, hiccups, and more hiccups. So that worked pretty well. Now if I change this to just areas, I can go in and do little fixes like this and expect it to essentially work properly. Alright, so N key, that's better. That's better. We'll turn the shadows back on. I'm going to rise up out of this shot and I'm going to literally re-render it. So that just fixed what was wrong. So when I go back to my this shot, should look a little better. Everything's a little grainy because it's at half resolution, by the way. This is full resolution. Looks like that. Okay, that's fine. Back to half resolution. Turn that back off. And good to know, Jeremy is back. Oh, okay. Jeremy's back, huh? Yeah, it was bound to happen. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to save this as 534. So everything I did today, I'm gonna destroy right now by saving this as, oh, it's gone forever. See you later, vector levels. I loved you. You were great while you lasted, but and we're still using vector levels for shadows, without a doubt. All right, so this shot, she says, okay, so her attitude's a little different here. So let's go through and we created two separate skeleton plastic tool mesh situations. What I want to do here, though, is change her attitude a little bit. So I'm going to hit the D key, save everything, and now we need to go in and soften her demeanor. Everything I just did, I need to now undo, believe it or not. So once again, lines and areas. I'm just going to, again, it's just easier to just get rid of things and start clean a lot of the time. Okay, and I'm glad I did, because what that showed me here is that the problem is not her eyes, it's purely her eyebrows. N key. Okay, the other thing, boy, can't believe I missed this, but there we go. Alright, grab that. hit the V key. Once again, we're just painting over everything. That's better. Okay. So now let's rise up out of the sub X sheet. Oh no, I can't. Sorry, my bad. Down here, what we need to do is swap this. So I'm going to hit the W key and just delete everything downstream, because the scowly face doesn't ever come up in this particular shot. Which does suggest, by the way, that our shadows are a little off, as you can see. So I'm going to hit the E key and just, you know, why fight it, folks? Let's just erase everything and start over. Okay, B key, everything, auto close, autofill, blah, blah, blah. There's a little bit of remnant there that you can see if you look really closely from the previous vector lines. It should not matter. I don't believe that's something we're going to be able to see at all in the render, so I'm not going to worry about it. I'll worry about it when there turns out there's a good reason to worry about it, but till then, okay. This is feeling pretty good. Yeah, I'm digging that. What the heck is this line here? Let's see. It must be in this level. Yeah, it is. Okay. What the heck? I'm going to hit the eraser in selective mode. Aha! I'm glad I did that. This is not, this line here is not my outlines. So if I go like this, I'm going to lose some of my outlines. So this is actually good news. I'm not sure what that is. I think it's this. And it is. So that means I can grab this since I'm erasing in selective mode, and it'll just get rid of that artifact. Now that's where Tahoma, you know, is paying for itself. Worth its weight in gold, people. Worth its weight in gold. All right. Yep. Okay, so boom. Why do we have the switch here? There must have been a change in attitude. Well, wait. No. I see what's going on. Yes. This. Okay. So here's what we're going to do. This is a little confusing. See? Okay. So the only thing that changes, if you think about it, the only thing that changes was the arm positions. So therefore, what we should be able to do is grab this, hit Control C, go to this drawing, delete, Control V, and now when we come back here, we've got the proper shadows. Nice, 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 nice. Okay, again, her line of dialogue is, you do look a bit ridiculous. Okay, so she says, you do, right there. So all of this stuff should come north a good bit. You do. It's still too late. As far as I'm concerned. What is this? Oh, that's an eye blink. Okay. So let's move that up. Right now, it looks like we're still alternating properly. So, okay. So I'm going to go up now, and as you can see, the entire construction of Tianara is being affected by the plastic tool. And so what we should be able to do, make some adjustments here. So this, I believe we want to resequence. And this, I believe we want to resequence. I think. Let's see if this backfires. Okay, that backfired. Why? Well, we actually didn't want to resequence this one. So bear with me here for half a second, folks. What we want to do is go here Let's move this way up here and see if this is doing anything useful. Okay. Yeah, you could add the little tilt to the head, so she says, boom, you do. Okay, that works. So therefore, I hope this isn't too confusing for you guys. So this would all get deleted. And this would all be moved up here. Come on, baby. And then we would move these up here. Yeah, possibly, Tom. Possibly. So we got that change there. What does that look like rendered? Yeah, the problem is being covered with a veil. It's hard to convey a smile. There actually would be a bit of a smile there under the veil, but so probably the eyebrows would be the likely place to do that. So the fact that it's broken up into two pieces is kind of making this a little more problematic than normal. So she says, you do look a bit ridiculous. Okay, let me time that out. Bop. Right here. So I would assume what we're wanting here obviously we got some real wacky corrupt looking stuff going on here. So this is, let's call this TIA 2 so we can distinguish it in the schematic. So again, we're kind of back to where we've been a lot of the day today, which is we're spending enormous amounts of time fiddling, compensating for things that aren't quite going the way we expected. So there's the mesh. Okay, I should rename this as well. Call this TIA 2 mesh so I know which one is which. So here's the there's your problem. The TIA 2. There's TIA going through the mesh. TIA 2 is not being piped through its plastic tool. There we go. That should have solved it, and indeed it did. Very good. Okay, except this keyframe looks completely dippy. So let's stretch these guys down here. Stretch these guys down. Whoops, down here. Really, Tahoma? Okay, I keep grabbing this and it won't stretch it. Maybe that's because of the resequencing. Maybe it's actually impossible to stretch it. Okay, I'll assume that's the case. So now we have to figure out attitude. This is actually really one of the hardest things for me. Okay. One of the hardest things for me is, as you guys have known if you followed me for a while, when I'm in the mode of I'm drawing, I'm acting. Okay, I'm using my stylus to act. This is a very right-brain creative thing. It's fun. You go and it's a real iterative process between you and the software as you tell a story. You convey emotions. You do whatever you're going to do. When I'm forced by and this is why I tend to get a little rigid about my opinions about what is or isn't working with software. This is why you're seeing it in real time today, which is this. When you have to essentially negotiate with the tools, very much from the perspective of somebody who would be using one of these, not one of these. Okay? When I'm forced into that very left brain mode, which I'm very comfortable with. In fact, I enjoy it. You know, the old days where I spent lots of time in Blender with a mouse doing 3D models and all the rest. Yeah, it's fun. It's cool. But when you have to operate in a very cerebral, logical, and to a degree combative role with your tool, to step back out of that into, okay, now we're just telling our story. Let's get back to the emotions. What is she doing? How does she feel? How do we convey it? It's really tricky snapping back and forth. And when I've been, I do find it difficult when I've been forced to spend a lot of time, like, basically battling with the tools that don't quite work and kind of sometimes crash and don't do quite what you thought they were going to do. It's hard. It's hard to, like, get back to being creative. So right now, it's a challenge to say, okay, you know, get back to being a movie director here, Dave. What do you want her to do? Okay, it seems to me that extra nodes here and here because we're at risk, and actually probably we should branch off like that. Because what's happening is we're that was wrong. We're at risk of distorting the size of her head when it rotates. So no big deal. And again, this is actually a good example of where if that cerebral process, you know, if it works pretty intuitively, it's not a big deal because I'm basically switching back and forth right now. You know, let's get things dialed in and then we can go back to being creative kind of thing. Right? But now what we see is you say, now that's behaving the way we want it to behave. Right? So she's saying, you do look a bit ridiculous. Unfortunately, the hotkeys to toggle between animation keyframes don't work on the plastic tool, so I don't really have a good way to just bounce between them. Question. Maybe. But if we're going to do that, then we need to have a tween right here. Little move, big move. Probably that'll work. What if she did a shrug? Okay, let's play with it. If she was going to do a shrug, then here's what we'd have to do. We'd have to have this and this. And if we really wanted to control it, we'd probably, again, tee it off. Teeing off with, you know, to really protect and control what you manipulate with your plastic tool is, I've found it works most of the time pretty well. Okay, so why did I do that? So that here, what we'll be able to do here is, boom, right there. So I'm gonna put this on a different frame so that my animation keys are separated. I'm gonna say turn off keep distance. That's gonna be pretty small. Okay, and we didn't have a global key, so let's go back to here and set a global key. So this might work. This might be okay. This is where secondary animation with a plastic tool can pay off big, because it's pretty quick to do, and to have to completely redraw my character just for that shoulder shrug would be a little bit silly. So now I'm going to go ahead and drag these back down. And that, I think that helps in this particular shot. Okay, so let me go back here. Yeah, context switching. Thank you, Tom. The eyebrows, I agree. Let's say, yep, so basically frame 16-ish. Let's go here, boom. And what we'll do is we'll make a duplicate here. And now let's go in and just change the eyebrows. So again, easiest way for me to do that is to just erase the ones that are there so that I'm not being distracted by the legacy material. But I think that would probably work. And do we want to also, let's do one other little thing. I'm going to, oops, I kind of blew that. I don't want to necessarily mess too much with her under her eyes, but I'm thinking if I do this, maybe that will make it so it sort of looks like a smile is emerging. We'll see. We'll see if it works. I think it'll work. Okay. Up and out. Well, no, not up and out. What we need to do here is around frame 16, we need to actually change this to that. Grab this, smack that in there, and geez, OP, I'm thinking this whole thing is a little bit short, so I'm going to go down to 24. Just jump up out of the sub X sheet, and yeah, again, I think that'll work. And boom. Okay, so it's a 3-second shot. So she said, oh, come on. You have to admit you do look a bit ridiculous. So she says, you have to admit you do look a bit ridiculous. Not bad. Not bad. And it looks like this, the only thing, I like it. Good suggestion on the eyebrows, Tom. Good suggestion on the shoulder shrug, Dave. The only thing I would change to sort of punch it up would be we got to correct the shadows right here. They're just not quite there. So I got to hit the D key, stretch that down, and you know, like obviously we're getting things done kind of a lot quicker now. Let's hit the C key. So now we're going to get into what I've talked about earlier when we were talking about vector levels. I'm just going to delete these nodes, and then I can use the Bezier tool to just smack that into shape. But it's a lot easier if there aren't a punitive number of, you know, nodes. So, cool beans. All right, I'm starting to feel better about my path today. And we'll say, by the way, I need to change my render settings to 534. Look at what Dave was about to do. So the other good news, I'm going to render this. The other good news is that, you know, by doing it this way, all of the post-production effects and everything from the earlier scene or shot are all preserved. Now it would appear that we've got one little strange anomaly I just saw. Oh, that's from an eye blink. Okay, the eye blink is out of whack. Okay, we better fix that right now, baby. Down into here, and yep, look at that. Okay, okay. That is definitely wacky. Alright, so I'm going to hit the A key. Column 5. And I want my widget all. Okay. Yeah, these aren't even, I don't even have the center point set. That's stupid. Dave, you silly goose. You're a silly goose. You're a very, very silly goose. That's better. And what if? Wow, what a day. I'm going to put that in there. You know, there is obviously a case to be made for the fact that the shadows aren't following the eye blinks. I'm going to live with that one because the eye blinks do go by pretty darn fast. So I'm going to go back up here. I'm just going to re-render this, pop it into the show, and see what we got. Okay, so there's something in routine, unique situations, one thing over the floor. Yeah, it's so true. So true. Love Tom's insights. Tom and Maria are sort of my little gurus of wisdom here. And by the way, you know, guys, this is a bit of a brutal path we're on today. So thanks for being here and following along. It's nice to have a little company on the road to software frustration. All right, 8 bars per second, and this is did we say 534 right there. So we've got about a 30-second delay on our live stream, by the way. Just so you know. God, man, you do look a bit ridiculous. Okay, properties. Line break on the cheek. How about that line discontinuity? Oh yeah, good eye. I'll get back to that in half a second. Back over here to our editor. Sorry about that, guys. For about 1 minute or two, I was on the wrong screen. So what we need to do here is actually take all of this and delete it. We were getting a duplication of it. And this is strange. We're getting into some strange territory here. I don't really see a good reason why these should be impossible to delete. And they seem to be. So the problem we're having is when this renders, we're seeing both layers. If I turn this one off, you can see that that's what we're supposed to see. But this is behaving as if it were, wait a minute, it is locked. Okay, Dave just had a stupid attack. And I don't know how I did that. I don't know when I did that or how I did that. I don't think I've ever purposely locked a level. It's a quite useful thing probably for a lot of people in a lot of situations, but that's why I was having the little bit of that issue there. Okay, so Tom mentioned the discontinuity in the cheek, and he is indeed quite correct. Let's check this. Yeah, it's actually in all the drawings, so this means it's easy to fix. Here's how we fix it. Actually, first let's go back here and clean this up. So I'm hitting the eraser in selective mode, so it's only going to erase the color that's currently selected in the palette. Okay? Next. Okay, it is not present in the other two drawings. Okay, so now the way we're going to fix the veil and the cheek discontinuity. And the way we're going to do it, therefore, is we're going to use the selection tool. In the middle drawing, what we'll do is first just fix this line right here. Then we'll take sample this palette entry so we get the right color, and then we'll use the V key to just clean that up. Backpedal here. Now I'm going to grab a selection of this whole region, and actually before I do that, let me fix one more thing. B key. There we go. And I suppose since I see it, I'll go ahead and clean that up because we had already amended this to accommodate the smile-ish. So again, V key, which is the Smart Raster Paint tool, what we call in Opentoonz the paint brush tool. And there we go. Alrighty then, and Control-Shift-R, and I'll bet you dollars to donuts that we're going to be looking good here when we go back to our preview. So let's go to good, full, and I'm actually going to go back and look at this one as well because this one's probably got some issues. I think I would like to fix it. Well, actually, this brings up a really important point. We'll come back to in just a second. Okay, that shot looks good. That shot looks good. So, okay. So now this is we'll see if this behaves as we expect. All right. So I'm going to go back to Tahoma. And now, importantly, here in shot number 534, we fixed the art as highlighted by Tom's suggestion. So all the drawings in this TLV level have been amended slightly. So I'm going to hit Save All. So what should happen is if I reload now shot number 529, all of those changes should have propagated, because when the TLV level was saved, yep, and look at that. So now we're just going to hit, I'm just going to actually, this is what I like about Tahoma. Now I can hit Control-Shift-R, and this scene's fixed as well. And when I go back to my edit, over here, sure enough, we've got the improved version. And that's what I mean by procedural workflow. Correction propagate upstream. It's a really good thing. To put it in terms that I know Tom would relate to, it's like improving a function in your software where the arguments don't change. You don't want the arguments to change. You don't want what it returns to change. But whatever goes on inside that function, you can tweak to your heart's content to optimize it. And as long as the args and the return don't change, then the improvement will propagate throughout all your software, assuming your function does not have any side effects. But the discussion of pure functional programming and its relative virtues is beyond the scope of a video about animation. Okay, so it's been 2.5 hours, and I think I'm gonna quit. I'm actually a little mentally pooped. This shot did come out well. I'm reasonably happy with it. I think that maybe, I guess there's one more thing I would probably want to change before I call it a day, which is I feel like her shadows are a little overblown. Right, cha. Yeah, it's at 15. I think we should go back to 12. 12 has always been kind of my de facto density level for shadows. And I'm going to save all, let it save, and then I'm going to load back up 534, change the shadow density there as well, and then re-render, and I think we'll be done for this session. And here's my shadows. Indeed, we need to change this to 12. Skip back up out of it, re-render, and then all of our shots are whooped into shape. And indeed, we see that, I don't know, it doesn't seem like the shadows are that much lighter. Maybe. Yeah, references to things instead of, well, exactly. Well, see, and that's the disadvantage of it's both an advantage and a disadvantage of working in Krita, is that everything you do in Krita is baked into the Krita file. So that gives you a measure of security, because you can always get back to that thing. But improvements don't propagate at all. So it becomes, this is probably one of the reasons why I haven't really been back in Krita too much in recent days, is that most of the key benefits I've ever gotten from using Krita, I've kind of learned to mitigate or get the same benefits here in Tahoma. And so the one area where Krita wins big is just purely paint tools. But the irony there is that increasingly I'm doing my painting with, you know, this is a vector level. It's just a vector level, which I showed earlier, where we have also a layer of black and white that are both really, really transparent, so you can just build up your value levels, and it looks great for a cartoon. You know, it just works. So, and then of course this was amended slightly by just doing a raster level, painting some airbrush over top of it, and then by baking those all into a sub scene. As far as, you know, the actual workflow is concerned, it feels like you're dealing with a single thing, a single object, single layer, whatever you want to say. So anyway, with that, I think I'm going to take a break. It is 11:36, and again, guys, yes, yeah, thank you, Tom, for confirming that that is a correct understanding. Yeah, as much as possible in your animation workflow, you really do want a, hey, Chris K, by the way, hi. you do want a procedural workflow for the most part. Meaning that, can you imagine, and again, this gets back to vector levels. One of the reasons you use a vector level, on paper, the proposed benefit would be, it'd be nice if you could draw your character in a nice 3/4 view or whatever. And this same drawing of the character, let's say, gets used in 17 different scenes. And if you're not working all by yourself, if there's a team and all of a sudden the team has decided our character design changed, we've got to add or change or delete something on the character, it'd be nice to be able to go into that asset, make it change, and then just re-render all the scenes, right? That's what we're talking about. So for the most part, if you are reusing assets in Tahoma, that's basically what you get. So anyway, bye.